Welcome to our Devos, where we have been exploring the topic of fighting fair. Most of us don't know how to fight fair. We fight all the time, but we don't use the wonderful wisdom that the Bible gives us on how to fight in a way that restores the relationship and it also glorifies God. Because no matter what, as we're living on this sinful planet and we're bumping up against people that sin just as much as you and I do, we are going to have to deal with conflict. And one of the things that you have to keep in the front of your mind, as I said last week when it comes to love being central, is this. The next thing of this is forgive unconditionally. Forgiveness can't be an option, folks. It has to be the chief posture. Now, I did a whole thing a couple weeks ago called the process of forgiveness, because forgiveness is a lot more complex at times than people care to make it. They're like, oh, just forgive, just forgive. And when you hear forgive, it means just forget about it, act like it never happened, just love that person and like be connected to them even though they might be abusing you. There's a lot of components to forgiveness. But this is where I would say forgiveness falls when it comes to relationships. It's not an option. The moment that you say, well, I don't know if I'm willing to forgive you, that I'm just letting you know that's not of God. It's never going to be of God. It's not Christ-like. It's not something that God is telling you to do. I promise you, it's okay to say, I don't know that I want to keep the relationship that I have with this person the way that I did, or I don't know if I want to put myself in a situation where I'm in danger, but forgiveness is never optional. Because forgiveness, believe it or not, has more to do with us and what's going on in our hearts than it does in that person and the offense that they've committed against us. Colossians chapter 3, verse 13, it says, bearing with one another, and if one has a complaint or an offense against another, forgiving each other as the Lord has forgiven you, so also you must forgive. Why it's a non-negotiable is because everywhere we see in the New Testament, forgiveness is never put on the playing field with the level of offense. It's always put in the eternal realm of the way that we have been forgiven by God. So if we understand the way we've been forgiven, which some of you, I know you might not. You're like, well, what do you mean? I don't do, you have to understand that God forgave all of your sins. He sent Jesus to die, to shed his precious blood so that you may be redeemed and you may be set free, okay? It's an unconditional forgiveness on the part of God. It's a one-way thing. You didn't do anything to trip God's forgiveness meter where he's like, nah, I'm going to forgive that guy. Look how good he's doing down there. No, we all were on a horrible, horrible path without God, and God chose to forgive, okay? So forgiveness is always based on the forgiver and not on the offense. Forgiveness, again, is always based on the forgiver and not on the offense. So when you have a conflict, even in your marriage, if you're like, well, I can't forgive them, it's not an issue of whether or not forgiveness is on the table. You have to forgive them. If you're a Christian, you have to. It's chief. Forgiven people forgive. Forgiven people forgive. Now, that process might take some time, but forgiveness has to be at the highest level of your priorities when it comes to interacting with people and fighting. If it's not, you're going to end up with a whole other ball of problems that are beyond the scope of this devotional. Bitterness, depression. You're going to do what do you call that? A quid pro quo, they did this to me, so I'm going to do this to them. You start to number their offenses. It's very, 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 very dangerous. So I want to encourage you, when conflict is on the rise, forgiveness is not an option. It's a mandate. It's required. You must forgive.